everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. And today I regret to inform you that once again we have to discuss the troubling overlap that appears to be ever increasing between the kink community and far-right ideology. When we've talked about this before, it's largely been right-wing and manosphere-adjacent men who have been trying to muddy the waters between consensual kink and their regressive interpersonal political agendas. It was never just going to be far-right men doing this, though. Oh, no. Now, far-right women are doing it too, and we need to talk about it because I have some concerns. So, part of the reason... It's not going to make sense, but it'll connect. Part of the reason why I still maintain a Twitter account, despite the fact that I know it is bad for my brain, is because it's about the only website that I feel remotely safe using that allows me to keep somewhat of a tab on what the regressive, ultra-conservative side of the internet is up to. It really is weird to think about how the website that was once mostly known for savage Rihanna comebacks is now instead a playground for white supremacists, but that's the way that things go these days, I suppose. But in any case, last week I came across a curious tweet that was starting to get some traction, and it read, quote, "This is the kind of relationship I would ideally like to have. He tells me what he expects of me in detail. I do these things to the best of my ability in return. He tells me how to spend my day, what to wear, what to eat, what books to read, and what media to consume, maybe even tells me how to do my hair and makeup, etc. Basically, giving the man every ounce of power he could possibly have over me. But also in a way, it's like girlfriend training. A guy said it's like he was guiding his soul to hers or something. I know it's a lot of responsibility to have a relationship like that, but I think for the right girl, it can foster a lot of really deep intimacy. But really, I think that's the purest kind of romantic relationship there is. Total dependency and submission. I think basically making a man the center of your world is actually a based and good thing to do. Call me crazy. Now, the preamble I've already given you all so far might spoil the answer to this question, but do you think this was written by a high-level power exchange submissive or a far-right conservative who believes in fixed godly gender roles? Put your answer in the comment section right now. Alrighty, pencils down. If you chose far-right conservative, you are correct. Well, actually, either answer is at least a little bit correct, but we'll talk more about that later. But the second choice is more correct, so that is what we are going with. I'm the professor and I make up the rules. You're just going to have to deal with that. Hi everyone, this is Evie here to tell you all about today's sponsor, BEDUCATED. We are here working once again with BEDUCATED, and you already know that they are one of the best in the adult education business. And today I really wanted to highlight one of my favorite classes on their platform. It is their Shibari, the sensual art of Japanese rope bondage. I've actually been in the process of introducing some new people back into the world of rope bondage. And if you know, you know, it can be over $100 for an introductory course on Shibari. And this class is over 2.5 hours, and it goes from the very basics like terminology over into single column ties, as well as some pattern ties and super important safety techniques like understanding nerve damage and risk. I highly recommend it. And BEDUCATED offers this class for such an amazing deal. You can actually get it and access to all of their other amazing courses on their website right now for only $8.33 when you use the code EVIELUPINE, EVIELUPINE at checkout. Again, that's EVIELUPINE at checkout to get access to this as well as their other courses. Something else that's little that I want to highlight really quickly as well is actually when you go to their course pages, it'll also show you what level of nudity is going to be in the content before you click on it, which as an A-spec person who does not always want to see everyone's bits out all the time. That makes a huge difference in my comfort level of using this website, as well as sharing it with other people that maybe also don't want to interact with that on an everyday basis in their educational content. I really appreciate it. BEDUCATED is an amazing website as well as an amazing sponsor. So if you want to support them as well as me, again, you can go to the link down below, only using that link with code EVLupine at checkout to get access for only $8.33 a month. That also includes their 14-day money-back guarantee. Again, everything is down below. Thank you so much to BEDUCATED for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back into it. So, okay, what was interesting is that actually non-kinky political Twitter had already latched on to this tweet before I saw it. People were already responding with things like, LOL, doms in the kink community complain about subs like this, and things along those lines. And I could certainly make a different video just talking about the perils of high-level brain-off style submission and how rarely that works long-term for most people, but today I want to focus on the meat of what is being said here. While, yeah, most dominants don't really have the time or energy for 24/7 micromanagement down to every morsel of food that enters your mouth, I want to be clear that wanting that or doing that is not inherently bad or wrong, if it is based on informed consent and a strong basis of mutual respect and trust, that is. There are all different levels of power exchange, and no matter where you fall on that spectrum, there's someone on the opposite side of it who will be totally into what you want to do. The problem isn't so much what kind of submission is being discussed here, but the context in which it is being said and the belief system behind it. This post had my alarm bells ringing, in no small part thanks to the blonde, Valkyrie-esque avatar used by the original poster. There had also been a notable viral tweet a few days prior in which someone else had, and this is a real thing, they had gone on a bizarre screed about how if women want to be truly attractive to men, they shouldn't own so much as a single beige undergarment. I am being totally serious. So being weird and controlling was already sort of in the general milieu over on Twitter lately, and lo and behold, when I went to that person's profile and I got past all of the OMG, I'm triggering the left, don't they know that I like being humiliated replies, I found what I suspected I would find, a plainly laid out and troubling belief system, including, among other things, professing a belief in men's inherent domain over women, a belief in the white replacement conspiracy theory, and a belief in the white man's burden. And if you don't know what those things are, I am so sorry to tell you this, but there are people out there who think it is white man's solemn God-given duty to paternalistically civilize other cultures via colonialism, directly echoing the biblical justifications used to perpetuate slavery in America. You know, because some people, I guess, are just inherently born to be slaves, and some people are inherently born to be masters. Part of a master race, you might say. Wouldn't that be really troubling if we applied that same logic somewhere else but replaced race with gender? I wonder what that would look like. Ugh, but yeah, it appears that this person was not just merely a wayward submissive who Twitter had completely misinterpreted, but a white supremacist who was laundering their desires using kink language to make it appear more acceptable and mainstream. Maybe they even think there's a connection between their political beliefs and the broader BDSM community and what we do. That's part of the problem with kink language being adopted by outside political groups, and why parasitic far-right advocates have done so. To survive, they hide amongst the words of other, more progressive belief systems to avoid being contested and dismantled. The same thing has happened time and time again throughout history, with the far-right using the political terms and slogans of their opponents to attract new supporters and confuse things. There's one particularly famous example of this, perhaps featuring a certain socialist party with a nationalist bent. And I don't even know if I can say that word on YouTube now with AI flagging, because I expect it might just get confused and think I'm supporting that belief system, but you can probably guessed the one that I mean, because yes, it is that one. The same thing has also happened more recently too, with numerous pieces of social justice and psychological frameworks being used to obscure less acceptable beliefs from the public eye. And heck, we've already seen this happen with kink, with terms like bratting and submission, co-opted by the manosphere and red pillars more broadly. But on websites like Twitter, the veil is quickly lifted back now, since consequences are virtually non-existent for having otherwise socially unacceptable beliefs on that platform, so it's a lot easier to figure out what people's naked beliefs actually are. And in this case, that belief is women are meant to be submissive to men as a class of people across the board because of the bodies that they were born into as decreed by God, or at least by nature. Defying that belief, attempting to have an egalitarian relationship, is going against the will of God and or nature itself. But should I care about this? What is the big deal? It's not like kinky people own the term submission or something like that, and like, yeah, okay, of course we don't. It's used in lots of other contexts, but I do think this is a problem worth documenting and taking seriously. Not just because I don't want to be confused with an ultra-conservative because of my relationship style on a personal level, but because this is potentially an opening of yet another pipeline. We've already seen the groundwork of this happening already. Tradwives, who are almost always politically conservative and come in a variety of flavors, are one entry point. They similarly use a desire for a simple, clean, happy relationship in which the burden of daily decision making is removed to coax people towards right-wing belief systems. This doesn't always happen on an intentional conscious level, to be clear, but it does still happen nonetheless. The happy homemaker with a KitchenAid sits right on the same path as the separatist doomsday prepper who thinks you should buy golden ammo to stock up on for when the race wars start. This is not hearsay. This is what scientific research shows. To be clear, they are all houses in the same neighborhood. They are related. And then the entry point that they've been presenting widens. They get bolder with what language and symbols they borrow. They start using terms like dominant and submissive in a way that sounds like kink. They start wearing day collars. And pretty soon, even non-tradwife conservative women online are talking about their desires in a way that is virtually indistinguishable from consensual kink to a layperson. And that is dangerous. It is like holly choking on an oak tree. The oak tree might have been there first. It might have been growing for hundreds of years before the holly came along. But it can get so covered up so quickly by holly, it becomes impossible for someone to come along and then separate the two, or to see only one without the other. Think about it. How many of you were young when you discovered your desire for kink? You were probably barely an adult, if that, with a rudimentary education on consent and sexuality at best. Back in my day, the biggest overlap you had to worry about between biblical gender roles and kink was some weird website promoting Christian domestic discipline. But these days, an already religious young person or someone with more mainstream conservative beliefs could easily find themselves falling down a disturbing pathway if it happens to be the first thing that validates their relationship desires or gives a name to what they're hoping to get out of a marriage. And without access to appropriate education in mainstream kink spaces, they might not ever know they're being suckered down a path that could end up hurting them and the people they're in relationships with. And again, to make this 100% super obvious, my issue is not that I think conservative bad in some nebulous, absolute way. I know that conservatism comes in many different flavors. I don't expect that everyone on earth is going to have the same political beliefs as me. What I do care about is helping people to have safe, happy, healthy relationships. And what the science shows when it comes to extreme, religiously informed, rigid gender roles is troubling. Even anecdotally, you're probably familiar with some of the viral ex-tradwives on TikTok who who were left by their husbands in middle age without any savings, a college degree, or skills for a resume. What was once a fairy tale life in their early 20s became a nightmare once their husbands unilaterally decided forever and ever only counted until an earlier model became available for them. Cue people now leaving no true Scotsman type comments, like, that's not a real trad man, as though this hasn't been a problem for the entire history of lifelong religious marriage. And this is all just when the worst thing that happens is cheating or being left destitute. My problem is simple. I want people to have relationships that improve their lives and make them happy. I do not want my community used as a tool to sucker people into damaging, abusive relationships that can take them the rest of their lives to recover from. If they are lucky enough to get out, that is. And there is one particular aspect of, let's call it, conservative religious proto-kink that makes getting out of such a relationship pretty difficult. If you watch my channel, you probably know a thing or two about consent. Even a random person off the street would probably tell you that someone needs to be able to say yes in order to give their consent. But merely saying "I do" in front of God and all of your loved ones does not reach the standard of consent that we have in kink, because you not only need to be able to say yes, you also need to be able to say no. And you need to have an accurate idea of what you're really getting into and the consequences it might have. This is called informed consent. Most conservative movements are strongly opposed to ideas like this. They don't want kids to learn about these concepts in school when they're getting into their first relationships, or even just navigating friendships and playground make-believe stuff, and they definitely do not want adults, but especially adult women, learning about this kind of stuff either. Conservatives, but especially conservative men, love to fearmonger about how it's so dangerous that people can take back their consent at any time, like that's what revocable informed consent means. Like it's some kind of widespread, slippery slope to getting falsely accused, and that'll lead to the destruction of heterosexual relationships en masse. The darker side of that is that many, particularly pernicious far-right types, don't want young folk to understand what is acceptable outside of a dogmatic religious framework because it might cause them to start questioning what's happening to them, particularly when such young people are pressured into insular marriages to older members of their religious group. You can see this kind of thinking manifested in their push against no-fault divorce and their desire to do away with secular sex ed in schools. This is not just speculation. It is a mainstream political agenda bullet point. So, that sort of culture broadly tends to pressure people to get married early and pretty young, and to stay married once a commitment has been made. That is one level of it. The deeper and more dangerous part has to do with the way that they view gender. Men are supposed to be the leaders of the household, and women are supposed to be subservient underneath them. Heterosexual couples are unhappy when they defy this nature because they're defying the will of God ultimately. And so that means there is no viable alternative to this relationship dynamic. Want an egalitarian relationship? Maybe you prefer your wife to be the boss of the house? Nope, sorry, that's actually unnatural and perverted and will always lead to unhappiness. This creates one heck of an uphill battle if anyone ever wants to revoke their consent in this kind of arrangement. And indeed, I would argue if your view of submission is based entirely on implicit, unchangeable aspects like the body that you were born into, there's no real way to permanently opt out of that arrangement. So how can you give meaningful consent to an arrangement where you have no easy way to leave? And you were not only not given the resources to understand what you're truly opting into in the first place, but if you do try to leave, you'll basically lose access to everybody you've ever known. And this might be controversial to some, but this is one of the key reasons why I see that there is a stark difference between consensual kink and religiously based marital submission. I do not think you can have ethical, freely consented to dynamics when they are based on immutable beliefs about people because of their birth sex as a category, whether that be a belief in female superiority or male superiority. Either way is wrong, one just happens to be more culturally enforced at the present moment. And this isn't even getting into the fact that such marriages and relationships tend to be inherently isolating, only allowing wives to talk to others who are inside of the group who have a similar worldview, and disallowing them from attending workplaces or schools where they might learn different things or be exposed to different ways of having a relationship. Whereas the kink community is, well, a community, and it's a lot more of a diverse place with many different ways of thinking, and people socialize across religious beliefs, socioeconomic strata, and cultural upbringing. And it is generally frowned upon to limit your partner's ability to socialize or to make their own friends independently. Do kinksters like control in their dynamics? Often, yes, but not that kind of control. I hope that with even these few examples, the differences between BDSM and far-right belief systems are becoming clear. Unfortunately, though, a lot of folks on the internet seem to be developing what I would call a horseshoe theory of kink, where the reasons why conservative folks are adopting kink terms is not for the reasons I gave above, but because they're essentially the same belief system with different set dressing on top. But is there any truth to that? And my opinion is perhaps a bit different than you might be expecting. I saw many popular responses to this discourse that said essentially, so you agree that you think consensual BDSM is the same as conservative, hetero, patriarchal gender roles. Yeah, I agree that getting off at being a victim of violence and getting humiliated because you're a woman once a week is healthier than doing it full time, the same way that eating a handful of your own is healthier than eating 2 handfuls of your own. Just some absolutely stunning and weird takes, but nothing we haven't seen before either. Now, I don't advocate for arguing directly against people with worldviews like that, because I have never once seen anyone like this change their mind, but I do want to offer a counterpoint for those who might be interested in what I actually think about this. And honestly, the bigger retort is just that people like this have no idea what the actual world of consensual kink looks like. While it occasionally can be a reflection of our patriarchal culture, it is not only ever that. Kink is not just women cowering in corners, crying after their partner hits them, or getting off to their own internalized misogyny. Kink is not just real-life dark romance. It doesn't have to be dark. Kink isn't just man hits woman, woman feels good because she's been conditioned to like that by society. And I could analyze why I think so many rad femmes believe this to be the case. Some of it is just going off of stereotypical mainstream cultural depictions of kink and stopping there and assuming it's correct for some reason. Part of it is because their favorite author, Andrea Dworkin, had her worldview and thus her anti-kink philosophy shaped by her dreadful personal experience with kink. Many women have also experienced their own uncomfortable introductions to so-called BDSM, with older boyfriends randomly choking them out without permission or getting an unasked for slap on the butt. And I am not discounting that happens, not in the slightest, because it does and it is a problem. But that does not represent the consensual kink community any more than all of heterosexual sex is represented by getting catcalled on the street by a stranger. So, maybe someday we'll do a deeper dive into that history and we can talk about all that in more detail, but for right now, I just want to correct the record here. Kink is not just only ever dark and serious. It can be light and fun, it can be silly, and it can be playful. It can look like a bunch of queer women all body painting each other, a bunch of femme witches having a magical ceremony in the middle of the woods. It can be a group of agender clowns throwing pies and booping each other on the nose. I have laughed and smiled more times doing kink than I have ever cried. Yes, even with the dreadful AMAB partners radfems are so often terrified of, not because I think I deserve to be punished for my gender or because I think I have to be this way, but because getting tied up can feel like a nice hug. It can be performance art. It can be fun to be silly and to play and to be something you're not for a little while. And I refuse to be told I secretly hate myself and other women by strangers because I sometimes like it. One of my not cis, not heterosexual friends drums out a Green Day song on my butt and then we laugh about it. That is why I say I wish some people had taken a different turn and discovered kink first. Not because they're literally one-to-one the same, but because humans like to play. They want to feel close to their partners. They want to feel close to their friends. They want to feel safe. And they are misled into thinking that they can get those close, happy, bonded relationships if they follow the instructions of the patriarchy. But they so often don't. Whereas kink gives you a million ways to satisfy those same desires, whether it be with a romantic partner or same-gender platonic friends or whole groups of like-minded people of various persuasions. It's not about wanting to just be controlled by a man. It's also about bonding and validation and acceptance, not feeling weird for what makes your body feel good. And if you're only ever told, oh, you only feel like that because God made all women the same way, and not the truth, which is that human bodies and biochemistry is weird and some people might like the same weird stuff that you do, folks are going to be trapped in unhappy, controlling relationships that they can't walk away from. I said proto-BDSM earlier, and this is the idea that I'm getting at. The same collection of desires can have a million potential outlets, whether it's kink or marriage or getting really into platonic cuddle parties or even furry culture. You can channel it in a lot of ways in some cases to get those needs met, and some options have a healthier endpoint than others. And this is not just me coping either. The science we do have, as I have discussed at length before in this channel, shows getting to express and live out your kinky desires improves your mental health outcomes and more relationship satisfaction. Denying them and trying to live a life that doesn't feel authentic does the opposite. It makes you suffer. So are we really going to say that it's preferable to make people suffer by lying to themselves and their partners? For what? When there's zero evidence that it has any benefit mentally or socially. And yes, there are problems that come up as kink becomes something that more people know about. You have people that get the wrong idea from media. They don't have the literacy to understand how what's happening on screen is happening. They don't understand consent. They're not given education. And so they think it's okay to randomly do things to a partner without telling them about it first, without getting their consent, and then dismissing their concerns. It is a problem when people randomly choke their partner or slap them or hit them or tie them up or do anything like that, but we're not going to solve that problem by lumping in the entire consensual BDSM community with far-right racist tradwives as though they are one-to-one the same, because I can guarantee you the tradwives don't like us. They don't like our relationships. They think that we're weird queer freaks that are degenerate and should be destroyed just the same as every other group that they're not a fan of. And they also don't care about things like consent. They don't want you to be able to get divorced. They don't want you to be able to say no to your husband in the bedroom. So why are we trying to lump these two groups together when in terms of how they want relationships to happen, they could almost not be more opposed to each other? And so I think we could all be vigilant in the kink community and online when we see things like this happen, because if we are not very careful, it will become very easy for, again, not just garden variety conservatives, because people like that exist, but like very, very far right extremists to come in, use our language, parasitize our community, and hollow it out for their own needs. Now, I don't know collectively what the game plan is here. I don't know what their end game is for behaving this way, for adopting kink language. I think it's about having an attractive entry point for people into their belief system. And kink just happens to be popular. It happened to be something that is more talked about these days than it was with previous generations. And so, in the same way that you see other community spaces attempted to be colonized by the far right, whether it be an interest in anime or video games or furry culture, any of that stuff, you are going to see the far right try to poke holes in that and get people to come over more to their side, and then suddenly, a year or 2 years down the line, they believe in the white man's burden, right? And that, I think, should be concerning for all of us. So that is where things are currently at over the last year. We have been documenting on this channel all those little ways that is starting to crop up, whether it be the normalization of non-kinky folk wearing day collars, or the attempt to do that, the manosphere adopting kink language to discuss the way that they essentially try to trick women into sleeping with them or have relationships with them, or actually abuse them when they do get into relationships with them. And all of that is so disturbing, and I am putting my feet in the ground. This is unacceptable to me. I will not allow this to happen. And if I am the only person on earth that is talking about this and documenting it, so be it. I will keep fighting that fight, because this matters to me, because the kink community should be and is inherently intertwined with queer people, with trans people, with liberation for all of those groups, and the liberation of queer and trans people vis-a-vis BDSM, and the support that our community should have together for all those various members of our community, no matter their background, no matter their gender, no matter their sexual orientation. That is completely antithetical to far-right conservative nationalism, and I do not want that world to take this beautiful community that can be used for so much good, for supporting others. I will simply not allow that to happen. It makes me so mad. But anyways, that is that on that. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this is a good example of how quote-unquote Twitter drama can have important things behind it. If you enjoy this and are ready, please do subscribe, because I make videos every week talking about kink, BDSM, sometimes politically stuff, pop culture news, queer issues, and so much more. If you've not already, please do also go over to my Patreon, because if you want to support the channel, that is the best way to go over and do that. It also allows me to talk about subjects that typically, like this one, are almost certainly going to be demonetized on YouTube, because, why should we talk about the infiltration of the far right into otherwise queer and, trans supportive spaces? I don't know. But why would we talk about that YouTube? But anyways, before I trigger myself into ranting again, we will just leave that there. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the absolute world to me. And until I talk to you all again very soon, stay safe, have fun, and I'll see you all later.